Okay, this is Gareth from the iMoot team. My great pleasure to introduce Mark Glynn to talk about student data. Data is knowledge. May I thank you on behalf of the iMoot team for your presentation and all the effort and time and that we know that goes into it. Over to you. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, super. Thanks very much, Gareth, for that very enthusiastic welcome. Hopefully I can live up to the enthusiasm. As Gareth said, my name is Mark Glynn and I work for Dublin City University. I am presenting on behalf of the team behind this project. We have Owen Corrigan, Aisling McKenna, Alan Smeaton and Sinead Smith there. Owen is the postgrad student working on this and he did most of the heavy lifting, in fairness to him, crunching the numbers and so on. Aisling McKenna has since been promoted internally within Dublin City University, but at the time she was a data analyst for institutional researcher for the university. Alan Smeaton is the professor of learning analytics, and Sinead Smith is our psychology lecturer who joined in with this project. We all joined in on it. So my Twitter handle is @GlynnMark. If you want to contact us at any particular stage, please feel free. And the slides will be available on SlideShare anyway, so you can download, cut, paste, harvest, whatever terminology you want to use with that. No problem at all. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about the student data and how we've put it back in the students' hands, because we believe that the students, with the data comes great power, and with great power comes great responsibility, and that's my probably homage to a Marvel hero movie. But I think it's important that we give this data back to students, and that's the difference between ourselves and quite a lot of learning analytics projects, where the data is owned and viewed by the institution. We want to put the knowledge that we have back into the students' hands. And quite simply, the reason behind it is, and I do accept that there are ethical concerns with data analytics, I'm not going to argue with them whatsoever, but at the very basic level, we feel we have this information that could help a student, and it's actually unethical if we don't give it to them. If I had course information, if I had books I wanted my students to go and revise, I'd tell them what they were. I wouldn't just keep it to myself. So we use that ethos, essentially, that we feel we're obliged to give it back to the students. And this presentation will take you through our journey on that, on this project. Okay, so just to give you an outline as to what we'll be talking about, the outline the talk covers our motivation, our goals for doing this particular project. Why did we bother, essentially? Then I actually see the slides are mixed up here. That we have the study by numbers. I would just want to summarize the study itself and throw a couple of numbers at you to put it into perspective. And then I want to outline the mechanism as to how we selected the modules to actually analyze. We've over 7,000 modules on our Moodle instance. We're a university with 16,000 students. Now, not all modules are live at any one time, and some run in one semester, some run in the second semester, and indeed some only run every couple of years. But there was no way we were going to analyze every single module. So then I want to go through the interventions. So what did we do when we had this data? What did the students see? Then, of course, tell you what the students said, because it was important for us to get feedback from the students. And as with all good presentations, we'll save the best to last and give you the results. So just bear with me 1 second now. There's some noise out in the corner there. I'm just going to just close the door. Okay, bear with me 1 second. Now, okay, so what was our motivation? Let's put it this way. We wanted to save students. The image is a little bit dramatic, I know, but essentially, and I know it's the same in the UK and the same indeed worldwide, students, first year is a problem for us. The transition going from second level school into third level is an issue for us, and we lose an awful lot of students. Now, I would be looking at it from a societal point of view, insofar as the knock-on effect that has in society when our students drop out in their eyes, when they fail college, that can have a huge knock-on effect to their personal development, but also their family. And the knock-on for that, if, for example, we're from Dublin City University, so if the first child in the family goes to DCU and fails, that's going to turn off the second child in the family and the third child in the family from even trying to go to DCU. So we want to make sure that we give the students the best experience possible. If I'm wearing my money hat on, or more to the point, if I'm trying to see this project through the finance director, he will tell you that every student is worth money. Every bum on seats is worth money. And that, I know it sounds very shallow, but it is a harsh reality of education is a business. And when we get fees, between fees and grants that we get from the government and fees and grants we get from the students themselves, every student is worth maybe €7,000 a year to us. So if we saved them over the 4-year period, that's €28,000 for every single student. So if we have, and remember we have 16,000 students, if we have data in Moodle that will help us save 10 students, sure, that's over €250,000. So that's our motivation in doing it alone. But for me, the personal motivations coming in, we are looking at trying to save the student and make sure his or her learning experience is a good one. So, study by numbers. We looked at 17 modules. Now, why did we look at 17 modules? How did we narrow down those numbers from 7,000 modules down to 17? Well, first of all, as I said, some of them are running first semester and some are running second. So that immediately cuts the numbers down. But what we also wanted to do was we wanted to look at first year modules. So because that's where we're having the problem. We don't have a retention problem, if I say that, a retention problem in fourth year. We have it in first year. So we wanted to concentrate on first year modules. We also wanted to look at first year modules that had a high failure rate. Now, the reason why we wanted to do that, quite simply, we wanted to see that our intervention make a difference. And if they were all passing before we intervened, and they all passed after we intervened, we couldn't tell the difference. Whereas if we could turn around and say X percentage of students passed, X percentage more students passed because of our intervention, that will give us a success, a measurement of success. Now, I have down here use Loop. Excuse me, use Loop. Loop is our internal name for Moodle within Dublin City University. We combine all of the learning technologies that we use, so Adobe Connect, Mahara, Wambiz, Moodle, all under one name, because we want to get rid of the technology. We want students just to see a brand and let the technology be invisible. We want lecturers to use it for pedagogical reasons, not because of the technology. So you will hear me refer to Loop on several occasions. It's actually Moodle in this instance. What we also wanted to do, so that the lecturers had to use Loop for this module to be applicable, there had to be periodicity. Now, I'll explain that with another slide, because as I say, a picture tells 1,000 words, and I have a picture on that later on. But we also had to have stability of content, because what we did was we looked at Moodle data for 5 years, 5 years of historical data. So we needed to make sure that it was the same lecturer that was teaching it for those 6 years. We needed to make sure that there wasn't a dramatic change in course format in those 6 years. So quite quickly you can see how we can reduce down to 17 modules. And of course we wanted to have the lecturer on board. We wanted to have him or her enthusiastic about the use of this learning analytics project. And at the end of the day, we operate the principle that the lecturer is king or queen within their own classroom. I'm only there to support. Our team is only there to support. So we needed to have our lecturers on board. So we offered them the option. All students had to have the option to opt in or to opt out. And the way we did that using Moodle was on conditional activities. We hid every section on the course. And we said every section is visible to you once you have completed the choice activity. And the choice activity, which is in topic 0 in Moodle, the choice activity is, do you want to participate in this study, yes or no? It didn't matter what their answer was, but they needed to make that choice. And just above that choice activity, we actually gave them 2 documents. One was a video. It was a video of my colleague, Alan Smeaton, explaining the project, explaining it in plain English. And then we also had a Word document, which was what we internally call, I'm sure you have something similar in your own organization, a plain language statement about the research that we were doing. So when they watched the video and when they read the Word document, the choice activity was then revealed. And when they made their choice, when they completed the choice activity, all the rest of the course content was revealed. So that's how we did it. That's how we set up the process. And 76% of our students opted in. So only a little shy of 400 students opted out. And I say there's no difference between the cohorts. I'll explain that again with a pretty picture in a few minutes. But what did we do? We sent out over 10,000 emails to just over 1,000 students within a 13-week period. And what did we send them in the email? We said, based on the last 5 years of data, excuse me, based on the last 5 years of data, your current level of engagement, we actually predicted you are going to do well, or we predict that you need to do a little bit more work. So again, we flowered up the text within that, but that's just to give you the basic idea as to what we did. We also split the groups in two and gave them two different types of email, and I'll get to that now in a second. But what you see here now at the moment is our Moodle activity. And I do appreciate that the x-axis is quite difficult to make out, but that's every single year. That's 2009, 2010, 11, 12, and 13. And what you will see is periodicity. Now, what I mean by that is we can actually identify, and I'm just pointing on the screen here, we can identify the first week in term. We can identify reading week. We can identify the Christmas exams. We can identify the Christmas holidays and so on. And actually, when we go to 2010, exactly the same periodicity goes. Practically the same shape repeating. Now, what I was delighted to see at first glance as owner of the VLE, I was actually to say, because we were measuring, this is total Moodle activity that we have in front of us. So every single click that was taken on the VLE, this graph tells me that more clicks happened in 2013 than in 2012, and more clicks happened in 2011 versus 2010. So basically what was happening was we were getting increased usage of the VLE. So in our instance, the VLE was far from dead. That was the first positive news that we got out of this project, but we didn't stop there. What we decided to do was we'd look at the periodicity at a module level. So not just at a site-wide level. This was at particular modules. And this is where we got the periodicity. Again, same sort of thing. We can see first week, we can see Halloween break, we can see pre-exams, we can see Easter break, we can see final exams, and so on. Again, same sort of shape. This is what we're looking for. And where we didn't have these same shapes, we didn't have this periodicity, we couldn't use that module because we were comparing the data sets, and we mapped the engagement that students had in 2009, we mapped that to their final result because we had their final result. It was an historic student. And we did that in 2010 and 2013 and so on. So then when we came to 2015, we were able to say, well, based on your current engagement, and we can map you pretty much to this cohort of students for the last couple of years, and they all failed. So you need to pull up your socks. Again, I'm being a bit dramatic with the language. We didn't quite phrase it like that, but you get what I mean. So there's so much data that we can use, right? So much data available. And we do have other projects where we are looking at this data, but solely this is looking at the access to the VLE and their age, because remember we were looking at, well, first of all, they needed to be adults. And in Ireland, you can start higher education at 17, depending on what age you start school at. So we needed to make sure that we only included adults in there in this study. And then we wanted to see, was there a correlation or indeed any trends between whether they lived close to the college or not. But We looked at that data, but for the purpose of these slides, this presentation, we are just reporting on their access, the number of clicks that we had. So how did we do it? We took all the training data, and you will notice, those with really good eyesight will notice that we have 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012 highlighted in red there, right? And then remember in 2013, we had the results, the final results for the students, but we built algorithms using this historic data, tested against our 2013 predictions every single week. We tested this, and every single week we built predictions, and we were able to train our classifiers or train our algorithms to make sure, modify our algorithms to make sure they were actually accurate. And we did that every single time. And we did this on a weekly basis. And we took the logs from every single week, first week in October over the 4 years, second week in October over the 4 years, third year, and so on. So what else did we do? Well, the modules that worked well, I mentioned that word periodicity, the repeatability, if you want to look at that, they worked well. Modules that worked well is this predictor that we built, the algorithms, using the algorithms, where that increased over time. We didn't want that fluctuating, and our predictions are accurate in week 2, but they're not accurate in week 3, but they're accurate in week 4, and so we didn't want that. That just gets messy. And I mentioned earlier on, we wanted modules with high failure rates, slightly dramatic, but we didn't want 95% of the people passing. We didn't want 95% of the people passing because we couldn't tell whether we made a difference or not, whether we saved students or not. And of course, the final thing is ones with large numbers, because if there was large numbers, we had more data to be dealing with. So that's where I was going from there. So I mentioned to you that there was no difference between the participants. We have in Ireland, we have these state exams when the students hit 18 at the end of their their secondary education. And for each one of the state exams, students receive their grades, and an A is worth 60 points, and a B is worth 50 points, and a C is worth 40 points, and so on. And indeed, at higher level, an A is worth 100 points and a B is worth 90 points, and so on. And what it does is those points are all added together for 6 subjects, the 6 best subjects, and they use those as part of the entry process to get into college. It's called the Central Applications Office, or the CAO process them. So those in the UK, it's the equivalent to UCAS. So what we did was to measure the academic ability of our students coming in to this study. We wanted to see, well, did we get more academic students participating versus non-participating? Did we get all the academic students signing up because they're enthusiastic and they go from there? Or did we get more of the weaker students signing up than not signing up? And actually we were able to say, as you'll see on the graph, the blue curve, the non-participants, the red curve, the participants, there is no difference, no statistically significant difference between the cohorts. We took another measurement where we looked at their maths scores in the Leaving Cert being LC, Leaving Cert maths. And again, I was delighted to see no statistically significant difference between the cohorts. So that was really, really good for us. So it means we could legitimately compare non-participants to participants, and with regards to their success in the final exams. So that was one of the first steps that we did. What I want to show you here is what's called a predictor curve. Now, not as pretty as some of the other pictures, and I don't claim to be a statistician by any stretch of the imagination. But just to explain what you have, this is a predictor curve. It's not a probability curve, right? And Owen crunched the numbers, and indeed Alan, being the professor of learning analytics, could go in and tell you in detail of the maths behind it. But I just must admit, I nod and smile when they do certain things. However, what I do know about this graph, and what I'd like to point out to you about this graph, is the magic number is 0.6. Now, why do I say that's the magic number? What it means is when you have a predictor score of greater than 0.6, any predictions you make are actually accurate, right? And again, there's a percentage put in there for like 95% of your predictions are accurate or something along those lines. Again, you get what I mean. I don't claim to be a statistician. So if I look at this and I go to 0.6, I come across here and I think, right, well, that's where it goes above 0.6. So anything after this point, any predictions I make is quite accurate. So now I scroll down here and I say, well, right, after week, maybe that's week 12. After week 12, any predictions I make on this particular module are accurate. So if I tell a student they're going to pass, the chances are they're going to pass, right? That's subject to no interventions, to normal business being continued. But the problem is, well, 12 weeks, well, that's a hell of a long time into the semester. And indeed, if that's a year-long module, that's no problem. But if that's a semester-long module, well, that's nearly the last week of the semester. So that's no good to us if it is a one semester module. But here's a different one. And again, 0.6, right? So now we can look at after, there is a blip here on week 7, but after week 4, we can make a prediction whether students are going to pass or fail. Even if we don't give this information to the students, this is incredibly valuable to the staff, to the module coordinators, to the students' mentors, to all sorts of different people. But as I said at the onset, what's different about us is we want to give the information back to the students. So there are 2 examples of modules of these predictor curves, right? Well, here's loads more. Here's all of the modules there that we had. And because we had trained our algorithms, remember, with all of the data, we were able to predict, and the 0.6 is here. My apologies, I just noticed in the y-axis is off the scale here. But what I'm noticing here is after 2 weeks on this module, but after 4 weeks on all of the modules, we're above 0.6. So after 4 weeks, let's put that in perspective. The old way, let's just say that in inverted commas, the old way, we found out if a student was struggling when they sat their final exams. So after week 14. And then in fairness, by the time we corrected all the exams, it was after week 15. So now we can find out 9 weeks earlier. That's just amazing for us to do. And remember, at this stage, we haven't given it to the students. So let's just see, where did we go from here? I started to look at those courses. So you'll see the course codes down the bottom. I started to look at these courses and look at what they had done, what way their courses were laid out, how many forums they had, how many wikis they had, whether it was a content-driven course or whether it was an interactive course. And I must admit, I was quite disappointed because the majority of them were content-based courses, full of URLs or full of PDFs or full of PowerPoints. So that leaves me as a challenge, as somebody in charge of teaching and learning, to change the way they structure their courses. Now, this was a manual process to go through to literally identify these, but we generated a report to count them, and I'll get onto that now in a second to get around that. But remember, so we had all of these courses, and some of them were you were able to predict after 2 weeks, some after 3, some after 4. So what were the lecturers doing? And that is a key point as well. We couldn't rule out the influence of the lecturer in this too. So now here's our nuggets, and I will give you time to read this email, but this gives you a sample of one of the emails. I said we split the group in 2. We sent one with the email by itself, as you will see here. You can contact us or you can contact student support. You don't have to contact your lecturer. This was automatically emailed out to them. And then the second one was emailed out to them pretty much with the same text, but also had an image. And I just want to show you the image there. Okay. Now, this is your level of interactions. This is the highest level of interactions in your course. And here's where you need to be to pass. So this particular student is doing quite well. And here's where the average number of interactions are within your class. And I'm just going to come back to that email to let you read that email just while I have a drink. Okay, so what we did, and we've done this in 2 years, 2 successive years. The first time we gave them this. The second time, we actually realized we could do a bit more. And the reason why I say that is because it's no good telling them they're going to fail and not telling them what to do, not telling them how not to fail. So we looked at the logs of the Moodle course, and based on the resources that the other students had accessed, we would say, for example, Carrie, you're doing quite poor in this module, but based on your colleagues, the resources that the majority of your colleagues have looked at and you haven't, click on the links below. And it brought them directly to the resources that all of their classmates were accessing. So we were able to use what I affectionately refer to as the Amazon model, right? People who have read this book have also read blah, blah, blah. That's what we were doing. Students who had clicked on this resource have more, you haven't clicked on this resource and the majority of your students have, so have you thought about reading it? So we were giving them a way to improve their scores, giving them a way to potentially increase their chances of passing. Now, why did we do that? Why did we look at the logs? Why didn't we just pick out specific resources? We did that because for 2 reasons. One, we can train the VLE to just churn through the data, and I don't have to have specific information about every single course. So that, and course content, so that makes it scalable for us. And the second reason is, of course, you could have 40 PowerPoints up or 50 PowerPoints up on your Moodle course, and then next year you revise them and you put up another 40. But a lot of our lecturers are quite lazy and they don't delete the original 40. So courses over time can build up an awful lot of historic unused content. So we wanted to make sure the content that we were recommending was, 1, still visible, and 2, still applicable to the students. So what did the students say? What the students said was, and remember, we call Loop Moodle. So where you see Loop here is they're actually referring to Moodle. So I mentioned we had group 1, which got the more detailed email with the image, and group 2 didn't get the image at all. But just look at it, 40% of them, 43.3%, said they changed the way they used Loop. They changed the way they used Moodle as a result of getting these weekly emails. And the other figure that really stood out to us was 70% of them, 72.2%, either strongly agreed, as you'll see, 45.6%, or agreed, 26.6% of the students said they would do it again if they were offered the option to get these weekly emails. So we were thrilled with those responses. Of the 33% said they changed the way they housed Loop. So we asked them how. Well, they said they studied more. They said they read more articles, other articles within Loop. And I'll let you read through those other bits and pieces there just for a second. The last one, I'm just going to point out to you there. I learned how often I need to log on to stay up. That's important. And what we felt was that was a crucial bit of feedback to us, because we felt we can train them, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way whatsoever, but we can train them how to behave when they go from 2nd level into 3rd level, how they can study, how they should study, how they should access their content. And that's what we're after. So, did you change how you used Moodle for other modules? And yes, they did. They looked at modules more often. They were more strategic about what they looked at. And remember, if we were giving them the results for Chemistry 101, they were logging on to Physics 101 more, and they were logging on to Biology 101 more. And one particular student said, well, I actually log on more because I realized that my lecturer actually looks at these things. So that sort of stuff. We had one student who thought he was first intelligent, trying to game the system, but it's not the way the system works. He was logging on and leaving the page open, but it had absolutely no benefit to him whatsoever. What interventions could the lecturers do? This is a dashboard that we gave our lecturers, and we gave them the student names and numbers, and they're fictitious, so we don't have to worry about that whatsoever. But we gave them a score. So are you in the top 10% of people engaging with it, or are you in the top 20%, or so on? And the scoring system is quite simple, 1 to 9. And if you score 9, you're in the top 10%. And if you score 1, well, you're in the bottom 10%, and so on. And we also color-coded it, because at a glance, you can see who's ever got all blue throughout the they're up top. So that's brilliant. They're engaging quite a lot. Who's ever got all red? Well, they're students that are at risk. So straight away, through this platform that we have here, lecturers can filter off and say, just show me the students at risk. And also, what we can do is we can look at it on a week-by-week basis and say, well, hold on now. The guy who is fourth on the list here, he starts off being at risk, but then actually he starts getting his act together. Absolutely brilliant. But then again, we don't want it going the other way, somebody that starts off doing really well and then starts to drop off. So these are people that we can save. We can have a much better chance of saving those students. So that's where that's the information that we gave the lecturers. Another way to actually produce this information and show it to the students, this is to the students' tutors or the students' mentor, is we would show them their activity for all of their modules. So they would see the average activity for that module, and then they would see this particular student's activity for the module, and it's even graphed from in quite a nice way. So the whole idea behind this is to make it easy for the tutors and make it easy for the lecturers to identify students at risk and then take action. We expanded that a little more because we started to go into it where we would see, well, there's more data that we can extract from Moodle, like did they submit their assignments on time? Was that an indicator, you know? And you're dead right, Gareth, we were changing the minds towards being more self-motivated learners, and that is a key thing for us. We wanted to train them. So here's the results. I said I'd save the best to last, and I've a couple of minutes to spare here too, so I've actually flew through this, so my apologies. But what we did was, I have the columns here on the right-hand side, the participants and the non-participants. So the ones that got the email reminders, got that intervention to tell them where they were, and the others that were totally oblivious to how they were going on, the non-participants. And the key for me is the majority of the figures are increases, and you'll see the ones in orange is actually decreases. But the ones that are highlighted in dark green there, they are statistically significant differences. And again, this is the key thing. We wanted to look at the numbers and see, was there a change? Did the ones that participate in the study, did they perform better, right? But look at the second last one. There's 9% difference in maths. A maths module, 9% of a difference. Now, the reason why that's not in dark green, the reason why that's not statistically significant is purely because of the popularity of the study. The number of non-participants that we had in that class was minute compared to the number of participants. So what that meant is we couldn't actually say, with confidence, we couldn't say that 9% gap is significant. But by God, 9% difference in maths. That is something to be screaming from the hilltops. So, what we did, I want to cast your mind back to the course content. Where did we go from there? We had those results that I just shown you. So could we analyze them again and look and see, well, what's the difference? How did the maths one give that 9% stuff? And the maths one was mainly actually a whole pile of PDFs. And again, you're right, Gareth, it could be down to the nature of the subject, because we had maths and law and politics and HR So some things work for some subjects and don't work for others. You are absolutely spot on. So I wanted to go a little bit further though, and I wanted to break down courses and try categorize them in such a way of content. Are they content driven? Are they assessment driven? Do they involve interaction or collaboration? Or is it a blend of all four? And again, just following up on Garrett's point there, the blend could be different for business as it is for maths, because the blend may suit maths more than it suits business, or vice versa. So what we've done is we've measured the number of activities that we have that are content driven, the number of activities on Moodle that are assessment driven, or interaction driven, and collaboration driven. And I just put up one here for the collaboration. We have chat activities, form activities, wikis, and glossaries. And then the first column in numbers that you will see here, that's the number of chats that are on that module or in this. This is a category-based report that we've done. And we base our categories on programs, and then there's individual courses on that program are in that category. So we run this and we say, right, in this program, there are 6 chats, 44 forums, 6 wikis, and 6 glossaries. But actually, within a time period that we analyze this, for example, within semester 1, only one of those chats is active. Only 7 of those forums are active. Only 1 of those wikis are active. And we only had X amount of users engage with that. So not only are we getting an indication of the blend of a course, and it is only an indication, I must stress, but we're also getting an idea as to how much historical content is up there that students are acting, and how I can look at this now and say, well, as the program to distance learning in, I don't know, sports science, they're not using forums. So I'll go into the program board for sports science and I will train them on how to use discussion forums, train them both technically but also pedagogically on how to integrate discussion forums into their classes. So try to bear with me while I read this message. Course content uses. It most certainly is important. You're dead right. And people do switch off. You need to have engagement in your courses. And it will vary from subject to subject, but also from the type of student, a part-time versus a full-time, a distance education versus a full-time face-to-face student. They all differ. And that's why we do these reports on a per program basis, because I don't think you could make a judgment on a per module basis. And one of the last slides now I just want to show you, actually it is the last slide I want to show you, is all of this is possible. And if you are doing something along these lines within your institution, is you need to set up a system where you can extract your data. So in our case, we extracted our data from our LMS, which you know is Moodle, and we put it into a data bridge or a data warehouse, depending on your terminology. I affectionately call it a man in the middle, the MITM, right? And the man in the middle sucks up the data from Moodle and then sucks up the data from our student record store or from our course database or from our timetabling system and puts them into tables. And then if it wants to, Moodle can extract that data from the student record store and back into Moodle again to generate a report, or can pull data from Moodle and from the Wi-Fi system and from the ePortfolio system and put it into a business intelligence system where it will generate reports. And that's what we do. That's what we did. That's how we managed this. We sucked up certain data points from our Moodle instance and then fed them to our postdoc, our postgrad, where he was able to crunch the numbers in his specific database systems that he had on his own machine. So that's me, folks. That's me done. The survey itself, or sorry, the project itself yielded very positive results in 2 consecutive first semesters, and in second semesters it yielded no change at all. And we actually put that into the fact, and it's an ongoing study, but we're putting that down to the fact that we have trained the students up well. If anybody is interested in learning more, there's the website is predictedanalytics.wordpress.com. So that's I'll just put it into the message bar here, predicted analytics .wordpress.com. Okay, and as I said, my Twitter handle is down the bottom of the screen here. You'll see it at Glynn Mark if it is something that you're interested in. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for taking the time to attend, and indeed thank you as well, Mary Fans, and Garrett for organising me.
Hi Mark, it's Gareth iMoot16. Thank you so much. Such a really informative presentation. I never knew how wonderful it would be to combine all these sorts of information in such a very big, powerful way. And you think it's such a big number crunching exercise. And manually would be horrendous, but to then put it into a system and get such really powerful, clear, crisp data, which can then have a really positive, meaningful effect on students, and catching them so early before they're failed towards the end is absolutely brilliant. So once again, on behalf of myself and the iMoot team, thank you very much indeed for putting the presentation and the time together.